So welcome everyone to the session on self-compassion and trauma. So that guided meditation, we were just exploring how we can open to sort of whatever is arising with that sense of self-compassion, and how critical that compassion is to being present, right? Because we talk about being present with whatever arises, right? We hear that a lot. But it's really not possible without self-love as part of it. And all that's really what I want to talk about, is sort of teasing out and exploring how important that aspect of self-love. And I like to call it self-love as opposed to self-compassion. You call it whatever, but it's more the sense of it that's important. But I guess with my training, I was always taught to use words carefully. So really what we're talking about is metta for ourselves. Karuna, is the way the Buddha talked about it, is more liberative action in the world, right? It's that compassion that whereby we express our love for others through our compassionate action. So for me, the word love kind of captures what we're exploring here in terms of self-love. Right. So this metta is that inner disposition, inner attitude, as opposed to liberative action to relieve suffering, which is what compassion is. But I'll use both terms, so just as long as we know what we're talking about. But self-love really involves acting the same way towards yourself as you would others, right? If you're having a difficult time or you're failing at something, you notice something you don't like about yourself, that you're bringing the same kind of love and acceptance that you would towards others. So the practice isn't to ignore what's arising, ignore the pain, and have this kind of stiff upper lip or perseverance mentality. You kind of stop and tell yourself, this is really difficult right now. How can I care for myself in this moment? So you bring that same kind of care and love to yourself that you would bring to others. I actually had a really difficult day today. So my father, who some of you know is 93 years old and quite a character, and he I don't think he's ever going to go for another medical test after this. So 3 days ago, so the place he's staying just got out of lockdown like 5 days ago. 3 days ago, he goes for a CAT scan for his heart, and they see something on his lungs, and the text basically says this could be tuberculosis, and they call his doctor, and the doctor puts him in lockdown, even though the place just came out of lockdown. And not like TB lockdown's worse than Corona lockdown. He's like, you can't even see your girlfriend, Mr. Hick. It's a complete lockdown. And that made him pretty miserable, right? I mean, he's not allowed to even go out for a walk. He's basically in his room. And I mean, these marks on his lungs go back to World War II when he breathed in, his ship caught on fire. So these have been around for a long time, but this tech saw it. And as soon as they say TB, of course, all these protocols kick in. So he was getting pretty depressed about it, really. And so today I was feeling down about it because he was so sad, and there was a lot of sadness arising in me. So I thought, I'm just going to keep calling the doctor's office until because I know what this can be like. They're busy, and this poor guy's just going to sit in this room, and people are going to forget. And so finally, she got the lab the X-ray to a specialist, and they could declare that it wasn't TB. But I was just sitting with that all day, this distress, right? And how difficult it is to just allow it. Because my inclination was to just kind of suppress it or distract myself from it, right? Like do something that would take my mind off it, so to speak. Or so I was really practicing and it took what we're talking about, it took a lot of self-acceptance that, okay, this is difficult and I'm not really processing this. It's hard, it's sticking, and it's so it was just it was practicing what I was speaking about, and wasn't with the things that were happened without the self-compassion or self-love. And when I guess about it was actually 4:45 because he made it down for dinner. His doctor called me and said, he's all clear. So I immediately FaceTime my dad. Dad, you're all clear. You can grab your girlfriend and go down for dinner. And he's just like, oh, thank you, bye. And click, and he's off he goes, right? And so this release, right, of all that tension. And what a switch, just to notice then, this is what no distress feels like compared to distress, and then to be present with that. So, but yeah, as I said, it's keeping that self-love, non-judgmental, non-critical, not saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. Of course if I'm feeling this way, then of course I should feel this way, right? Because that's what's arising. There's no other way to feel, right? If you're feeling a certain way, there's really no other way to feel. Right? So it's just being able to be with that which is arising with kindness and love. So I'm going to talk about this in a bit, and then kind of explore what the Buddha said about it. So Kristen Neff really talks a lot about self-compassion. Lots of videos on YouTube and lots of books by Dr. Neff. And she says there's three components of this. And I really like these three components. And I think they really relate to how I see this. So one is self-kindness versus self-judgment. And the second one is common humanity versus isolation. And the third one is mindfulness versus identification. So I'll put some meat on those words because I think they're so important. Self-kindness is kind of self-explanatory, I guess. It's kind of being warm, friendly, understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate. Right? So rather than criticism or judgment, just bringing that sense of kindness, like you would to a dear friend. We're so often much harder on ourselves than we are with our dear friends. We have a tendency, I think, to judge ourselves, and we can be quite harsh sometimes in the way we judge ourselves. When things don't go the way we want, self-criticism, judgment may arise, and then we suffer. We suffer stress, and we suffer more self-criticism. So this practice is pointing towards, accepting things as they are with kindness and equanimity. So, accepting things as they are and then equanimity arises. So that's self-kindness. That's the so not pushing things away. I'm going to play a video here. This is one of my favorites. I've always wanted to play this. It kind of fits with what we're talking about. I'll play it and then you can tell me what you think of how it relates to what we're talking about. Oh, I have to share the screen. Okay. There it is. So I'd be curious what your interpretations of that might be. How did that grab you? What's it have to do with mindfulness and self-compassion, self-love? Anybody?
It's kind of like this the second arrow teaching. It's the same kind of idea. The self-inflicted damage to the original one. And it just multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. And all you have to do is change your mind about it. One fly isn't going to kill you. Just live with it. Be accepting.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the more he resisted, the worse it got, right? It multiplied. The difficulties multiplied. The more he resisted, and he identified it as a difficulty, resisted it, and it multiplied. And as soon as he could see it as not a difficulty, like when the fly became a flower in that painting, to me that was symbolic of it no longer being pain. It's now just part of the miracle of existence, right? It's a fly is a miracle as much as we are, and he could then just accept it and be with it. It changed from being painful to being joyful. It's one of my favorite favorite. I watch that every once in a while, just if I'm wondering about the practice. One of the hindrances is doubt. When doubt arises, I watch The Fly. I mean, if it works, whatever works, right? Sometimes I sat like a samurai when in my early days, so I would watch The Fly and go, okay, no, it's not about being a samurai. It's about accepting and self-love. Yeah. So that's the first of the three. The second, which really I really resonate with, is the common humanity. And this is I noticed it this week, especially as I practice with self-love. I noticed that the really the first noble truth is so central to the practice, knowing that all beings, including ourselves, suffer. It's all part of being human, which is the first noble truth. And seeing that it's all part of being human, we can release the self-judgment, the shame, the fear around our own suffering. With this self-love, we can let go of the self-judgment. Because sometimes we think we're the only ones suffering or the only ones making mistakes, right? The only ones that feel this way. And self-compassion recognizes that all humans suffer and make mistakes and have feelings of inadequacy. Recognizes that we're all vulnerable, imperfect. That's what being human means. So it's self-love involves recognizing that suffering and personal inadequacy are part of common humanity or shared human experience. It's something we all go through as humans. In other words, it's not just happening to a me. It's happening to all of us. So I really see this one as so central in sensing into and touching into self-love, is sensing into this notion of a common humanity. And the third one is what Kristen Neff calls mindfulness versus identification. And this is an interesting one as well. When we look at the Buddha's teachings, with mindfulness, we can place our current situation in a larger perspective, right? We can see it in a wider, wholer way, more complete way. We can kind of observe the negative thoughts and distress, whatever might be, emotions arising with more openness and more clarity. They're held in this kind of mindful awareness. So we did in the guided meditation, bringing awareness to the distress that's arising. We can observe and understand. I think I use those words as well, as opposed to suppress or deny, which is all part of this practice. So we really have to allow our pain, right, in order to feel it and feel compassion for it. We have to allow it. So mindfulness, in this sense, really requires of us not to be kind of over-identified with it, not to be over-identified with the thoughts and the feelings that are arising. I listened to a talk. Eckhart Tolle has a talk on trauma, and a woman at a retreat asked about trauma, and his response was very directly talking to her about being over identified with her trauma. I've never played this talk to a group because it to me, it was, for just a student that you don't know, it's at a retreat, to be that direct, I thought was, maybe for me, it was a bit too direct for me at that, to play it and to, but the more I kind of look at it, he was giving a very helpful teaching, and because there is an over identification sometimes with what's arising around our trauma. We can get caught up in it, over and identified with it. But that's a very tough teaching to hear, right? That's a very tough teaching to hear. So another vein, if we over-identify with the egoic mind, we suffer, right? We've seen that. The ego mind's really that constant voice that's criticizing, and we can over-identify with that. And I always like to say, yeah, the egoic mind is inadequate. So if you think you're the egoic mind, then yeah, you're going to feel inadequate, because it's not your true nature. Your true nature is limitless, infinite, right? Whereas egoic mind is limited and finite. It's by the egoic mind, by its very nature, is inadequate. So if you're identified with your egoic mind, you're going to feel inadequate. So it's another way to kind of come at the, Kristen Neff doesn't come at this teaching in this way, but it's another way that I see coming at it. Or, seeing our true nature as unlimited, infinite, limitless, perfect. Right? So that's what we want to sense into, is that aspect of ourself. So I'm going to play one more clip. This will be the last one for today. This is Jack Kornfield talking about replacing self-hatred with compassion. Let me get this going.
It turns out that mindfulness has to be married to compassion and loving kindness. And when we first taught these practices, that my colleagues like Sharon Berg, Joseph Goldstein, and so forth, we all had our training in the 1960s and early 70s in Southeast Asia and India. When we first taught these, because I'd trained in a ascetic forest monastery, and there was a kind of ethos of a kind of warrior quality of training. Sit up all night, don't really be mindful. It didn't work very well here, because it got conflated with the American values of striving and ambition, and people were, okay, I want to get enlightened, and the more they want to get enlightened, the tighter they became. Or they saw it as a way of, I've got to be on my breath, or I've got to pay attention, and then they judged themselves all the time. It amplified their self-criticism. Not only am I not good outside, but I'm also a failure as a meditator, and and I can see all this trouble in my mind, and it amplified all of that stuff. And there was this famous dialogue we had with the Dalai Lama in the late 80s, asking about how you deal with self-hatred in Tibet in training, and he was completely confused. There is no word for self-hatred in Tibetan. What do you mean self-hatred? It took a long time for the translator to kind of get through to him. Finally, he looked up, he said, but this is a mistake. Why would anyone do this? And he said, oh, no. How many of you, he asked in our group, have had experiences of self-hatred and lots of self-criticism, self-judgment? Almost all the teachers' hands went up that were in this circle of teachers. He said, oh, okay, I see. You have new problems here. I said, we have lots of new problems, right? So, in fact, from the beginning in Buddhist psychology, compassion and awareness are woven together. Because in order to be present for experience, there has to be some element of kindness. Otherwise, you're judging it. You know, this is good, that's not, I want more of this, I want less of that. But if you bring them together as loving awareness, then you're able to be present without manipulating or being in conflict with the experience the way that it is. And that gives you both more understanding and also becomes the ground for, as you'll see later, for making healthier changes.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. So that he pointed to that same sense of you really need to have the two together in order to be present for what's arising. You really have to bring in the self-love, loving awareness. Yeah. That story of the Dalai Lama gets told a lot, where he didn't know what they were talking about. The translator went on for several minutes trying to explain self-hatred. My teacher training with a group, so it was all people training to be Dharma teachers. I forget the question that was asked exactly, but the answer that came out was a real feeling. Our greatest fears. I think he was talking about what do we fear? What are our greatest fears? And so we went around the room, and it wasn't a question. Matt didn't say, who wants to. He just said, well, we'll start with you, and we'll go around the room, right? So everybody had to say something, and every single person said a sense of inadequacy. They had this deep feeling of inadequacy as a teacher. So there was a self-judgment. And of course, I felt that, but I thought I was the only one feeling it, right? Like I thought, wow, these guys are all so great. I mean, look, all this wisdom that flows out of their mouth. I'm like an imposter. I probably shouldn't be here, right? And then just to hear like everybody say that it's, and the honesty too, for everybody to share. This runs deep within us for sure. And perhaps it's more widespread in the West than the East, based on culture, religion, whatever it might be. That's no need to really theorize about that. I know I didn't see it as much when I lived in the East as I do here in Canada. But it's something to be aware of in our practice, that we have to almost put in this, be really when that arises, and bring kindness to that as well when self-criticism arises in our practice. I have here a question. What's the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion or self-love? Don't know what comes to mind for you when you think about what the difference might be, because we often talk about the self-esteem. I remember studying as an early social worker. We talked about building people's self-esteem as part of social work practice. So what do you think the differences might be between self-esteem and self-love, self-compassion? In a really practical sense, not necessarily an academic sense.
what comes to mind for me is self-esteem is sort of,
To me, I think, oh,
Okay, Nita, and then Maureen. Yeah.
okay. Self-esteem would, for me, is sort of the image that I have of myself and what sort of who and how I think I am. Whereas self-compassion, is that the other one? Yeah,
Mhm.
self-compassion is sort of how I feel about myself, not so much how I see myself. It's the judgment I bring to the concept of self. So that's my what comes up for me.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, Maureen? I think we might have a delay, a video.
yeah, so I think of self-esteem as, oh, just as the feeling that I'm capable of something, that I'm good at doing something, I'm a good mother, a good teacher, I feel comfortable in my capabilities. Whereas self-compassion to me is a much broader, just acceptance and liking of who I am, no matter where my weaknesses are. Anyway, that's how I see it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's self-esteem's often based on a comparison with others, right? Which may even lead us to put others down, so we feel better about ourselves. It's often contingent on our latest success or failure, right? We can have our self-esteem can fluctuate with the external circumstances. So, and self-compassion is not really based on a self-evaluation or comparison with others. So it's not based on this evaluation of ourself. We don't have to feel better than others, that we're better than others to feel good about ourselves. We're just accepting ourselves as it is. Our personal failings can be acknowledged with kindness, right? As part of being human. We don't have to build up our self-esteem or compare ourselves in some way. It's just accepting whatever is here with this sense of kindness and love. Doesn't need to be hidden. We don't have to hide our mistakes or failures in order to feel better about ourselves. So that's kind of in a rough sense what the difference is. So that's why we tend to talk about self-compassion in this practice. Now, what did the Buddha teach? This is interesting. The Buddha didn't teach self-compassion, right? This came out of when Buddhism came to the West. It helped. It came, as Jack really pointed out, it really did come more as the wisdom practices immediately, like meditation. The sila or ethical practices were kind of dropped, and the to a large extent the the compassion brahmaviharas were kind of dropped, and it was really focused on wisdom. And then we saw the problems, like Jack pointed out, it didn't work in the West. People overstrive, made it achievement oriented. So then they started to bring in metta and then self-compassion. But the Buddha never, he taught the two wings of the Dharma as being wisdom and compassion. And compassion was very much taught as compassion, action towards others. And you'll see that in the sutras. So it wasn't on his radar. You couldn't say that. The whole idea of self-love and addressing self-hatred wasn't really on his radar. The same way it wasn't on the Dalai Lama's radar, right? There wasn't a word for it or really a sense of it. So the Buddha didn't teach it. It was like compassion for others is what I'm teaching, is what's important. So yeah, there's quotes out there, and you may have seen some quotes that have been attributed to the Buddha. A favorite quote of mine, which is a fake Buddha quote. You can see all these if you Google fake Buddha quotes, you'll go, oh my goodness, that's a fake quote. I love that quote. And this is one that, in fact, if you've been with this group a long time, it was actually on the website of on payattention.ca. And the quote is, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserves your love and affection." Remember, do people remember seeing that? Those slides that came across. I've seen some of the people that have been with this group for over decades in some cases, right? You remember that quote, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserves your love and affection." It's a beautiful quote. It's the Buddha didn't say it, but I don't know who said it. It's always attributed to the Buddha. So there was really a general assumption that we would be dear to ourselves. And then the practice was to extend that to others, right? To extend care to others, and you see that in the suttas. The Buddha, the King Pasadea and Queen Malika. So really some famous quotes in there, because he was, that are often relevant for us in our practice. He said, searching all directions with your awareness, you find no one dearer than yourself. So he's addressing it. In the same way, others are dear to themselves. So you shouldn't hurt others if you love yourself. And it is implied in all the practices. Yeah, so sorry, that's what so you shouldn't hurt others if you love yourself. So I'll say that quote again. Searching all directions with your awareness, you find no one dearer than yourself. In the same way, others are dear to themselves. So you shouldn't hurt others if you love yourself. So there's really a sense of self-love is there. Now the practice is to, you wouldn't hurt yourself. So the practice is you don't, not to hurt others. The Buddha also said, you should train yourself thus. I shall remain friendly and empathetic with a mind of loving kindness, and I shall not give in to hatred. So that was applicable to ourselves and to others. So there's a few instances where he alludes to love towards ourselves and others. But it's not widespread in the teachings. But as I said, as Buddhism's unfolded in the West in so many ways, that it's become really central to our practice. Yeah. So self-love, self-compassion, how we bring that, how important that is to bring into our practice. And this is not just if we're dealing with historical trauma. This is, I think, for anybody engaged in this practice, because I really think this self-judgment, self-criticism is present in so many meditators. If we are dealing with historic trauma, then the distress and emotions, physical sensations that are arising can be so much more intense that then that judging mind can really affect how we practice. It can actually drive us away from the practice in some instances. It's just too much. it's not for me. It's too much. So it really emphasizes then the importance of going, okay, bringing that self-kindness, self-love to, okay, this, I can care and comfort myself. It feels like too much. So let's, I'm going into some practices that can soothe and comfort in this instance. And then I'll come back to this later. We talked about this last week, that kind of titrating into the very difficult emotions that arise. Yeah. So how do we cultivate this self-love and compassion? So it's not a sense, we can actually bring judgment into how we practice self-love. You see how that can happen. Oh, why can't I just be kinder to myself? I'm not very kind to myself. And that's a judgment, right? So it's a willingness not to be perfect, willingness to embrace all the moments, even the moments of resistance and judgment, right? Because there was a reference to the two arrows. Now, the first arrow is the pain. The second arrow is the story we add onto it, that which creates more suffering, right? So you could feel some distress, and then we can add all kinds of thoughts and narratives to that distress, that emotional distress or that physical pain, whatever it might be, that just compound the suffering. And that can be the same with judgments. When judgments arise, we say, oh, there's a judgment, rather than either believing the judgment or judging ourselves for having the judgment. So the idea is not to resist anything, not even the judgments. Right? So when I was dealing with the story I told you with my father, I would notice that I was feeling a fair bit of distress, and so the judging thought would come up. Well, why aren't you should be feeling equanimous in this? You've been practicing the Dharma for decades. Why are you not dealing with this better, right? So the judgment comes up. Oh, that's a harsh judgment. Well, that's a thought. Just sort of being with it and saying, okay, there's just a thought. But if I had gone, oh yeah, that's right. Maybe I should go meditate and make myself a better meditator right now, and then try to sit down, and I could have just fed into it. So it's just allowing the judgment. It's just a thought arising in the mind, and just to letting it flow through. And that was one kind of a turning point for me, where it just kind of started to go, okay, you can let go of that. You can be with it as it arises. And of course, when we talk about clarity, as soon as I kind of let all that go and I didn't identify with it, it became less about me and more about, well, what can I actually do to help my father get out of his room? Because that's what's distressing, right? All this other stuff is just my mind created. The real issue is getting my dad out of his room, so then I could get on the phone and call people. So clarity can arise, right, when the clouds of identification and judgment, resistance, struggle dissipate. And you see that, you've all seen that, right? You've all seen that when struggle dissipates, there's a real sense of clarity and balance that fill in. It's not like you have to create it at all. It's our natural state. It just fills in. It wants to balance and clarity, want to express itself. So I often don't even really cultivating equanimity. We're not cultivating. Equanimity is always present. We're simply not resisting everything that's happening. As soon as we let go of our resistance, what's left? what's left when we let go of our resistance to what is. Peace and equanimity. It's present. It's just there. We don't have to create it. So just being willing to embrace all the moments, even the moments of resistance and judgment, and listening to what's arising within. So we this, we say, there needs to be self-compassion. It's kind of the forerunner to be able to extend compassion to others. Self-compassion. Pema Chödrön often said, in order to have compassion for others, we have to have compassion for ourselves. So we really have to start, in so many cases, with ourselves. I have a poem here. I just came across this poem. I had never seen it before. By Jeff Foster, who I'm not familiar with. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with Jeff Foster. Okay. If abandonment is the core wound, it's called. If abandonment is the core wound, the disconnection from mother, the loss of wholeness, then the most potent medicine is this ancient commitment to never abandon yourself. To discover wholeness in the whole mess is to be a loving mother to your insides, to hold the broken bits in open awareness, to illuminate the sore places with the light of love. I'll read that again. If abandonment is the core wound, the disconnection from mother, the loss of wholeness, then the most potent medicine is this ancient commitment to never abandon yourself, to discover wholeness in the whole mess, to be a loving mother to your insides, to hold the broken bits in open awareness, to illuminate the sore places with the light of love. Yeah. So to illuminate the sore places with the light of love. I don't think it can be said any better. I mean, that's the practice, to hold the broken bits in open awareness. And to recognize that we all have broken bits and sore places. That's that's the first noble truth. No one's perfect. No one never makes mistakes. No one will live without distress or pain or discomfort and so on. To discover, I love this line, to discover wholeness in the whole mess, and he spells whole with a W. To discover wholeness in the whole mess, to be a loving mother to your insides. Yeah, I think if you're ever wondering what self-love, self-compassion is, that could be a poem to just to pull out and, okay, this is what it is. Sore places, there's a sore place, there's a broken bit. Can I hold it in open awareness with the light of love? Yeah. So we're really being warm to ourselves when we're encountering personal pain or personal shortcomings, rather than ignoring them or hurting oneself with self-criticism. So it's just this kindness, even amongst the whole mess. When we're confronted with our perceived personal failures or inadequacies. Being warm and understanding with ourselves. So not ignoring it, right? We're not ignoring it or suppressing it. We're totally opening to it, but with this kindness and love. And as Jack Kornfield said, we can't really be open to it we can't be present without self-love, without loving kindness, because then it becomes, it shouldn't be this way, or it should be another way. It becomes judgment. We move to judging what's arising. So this is really what the word acceptance is pointing to. Yeah. I'll leave it there and open it for any questions or comments about that talk or dialogue, and anything else that might be on people's minds or hearts.
So when you mentioned that it's going to be on self-compassion, we're going to talk about that this week. Of course, I thought, oh yeah, here, that's not one of my favorite topics and whatever. And even the self-compassion meditations sometimes were tough, like they niggled when I was first exposed to them. I thought, yeah, but tonight it was, I think it boiled down for me to a kind of a great reminder of something we all know that's important, that it's common, it makes sense, you've got to love yourself to be able to love others. But boy, it's something that I think we so easily forget, and we do need to come back to it and to be reminded and to reflect on that. It's kind of like, I don't know, the nose on your face. It's there all the time, but we don't always notice it. Can't really see it, and it's pretty important. So I think that made me feel really good. So thank you.
In the poem that you read, one of the lines was about to be a loving mother to your insides. And it just reminded me of a practice that I was taught once about self-compassion. So when one is suffering and feeling very self-judgmental and self-critical, the suggestion was just imagine yourself as being a young child who's in that state. And it just, when you do that, you just automatically feel that kind of awe, and that sort of compassion sort of naturally sort of arises. And I found that to be a very helpful practice. So this poem seems to line up very much with that practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the image of a loving mother was brought up by the Buddha as well. That's a way to cultivate metta, the mother with a baby, with the baby, that deep maternal connection is a way to cultivate metta. Whatever works. Because I in the meditation I spoke about connecting with your the inner love and compassion. And, it's a short meditation, but people will discover different ways. I've discovered that people discover different ways to connect with that. It might not be a mother baby, because maybe they had difficulties with that relationship in their lives. It might be a pet. Might be their dog or their cat. It might be a dear friend. It could be a number of. It could be a figure, the Dalai Lama or the Buddha, or some image of that. So whatever kind of draws in that sense of loving kindness, it's a good way to connect with it and then bring it to ourselves, right? So it's a way to connect with that sense of love and then bring it towards ourselves. So I went over that a little quick in the meditation. Sometimes it's hard to do the 35-minute to go through all the steps, because that's a very deep practice that we did. And every time I do it, I'll start with the body. It'll always start with the body, and then I'll shake. I can feel releasing of energy, and then it'll right away shift to the heart, and I'll feel the distress of what was released in the heart, and then I'll feel tears. And it's kind of just a way of progression through that. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it happened tonight. It doesn't matter whether I'm talking and giving it or listening to it. The same kind of elements unfold. So for me, it's a very deep and dear meditation to practice. But the key to it is getting that connection, as you said, with the whatever it might be, the loving mother to your insides, or the loving pet, or whatever it might be, to connect with that. And so you can hold whatever's there with that sense of loving kindness, self-love and kindness. Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen. That was really good. I've struggled with self-compassion as a topic as well, much like Anita was kind of echo her sentiments. It's always a teaching that I felt like I always felt like maybe it seemed a little bit contrived when you look at some of the other, like when you read some other Buddhist things, the idea of self-compassion and then you read other stuff by Buddhist authors that say, well, ultimately we're trying to see that there's no self. so how do we, trying to resolve those two things in my mind, it can be difficult. And so I try not to think about it too much and just try to go inwards. But I can see, I feel like after listening to what you're saying, that, especially in the West, we get so, and I mean, I feel this myself too. I get very hung up on like, either like shame or a sense of kind of unworthiness. And it's like you need to show yourself compassion in those moments, because in order to deal with those emotions and be able to have some sense of equanimity towards them. So I can after listening to this talk, like I really feel more like I feel like I have a better understanding of where self-compassion fits in. So thank you.
I don't know if I'll open the self can of worms right this minute. It's I kind of alluded to that a bit when I talked about our true nature and being identified with the egoic self. But so we are. I mean, our true nature is one of love and compassion, right? So I also had from a, like, I mean, I had troubles with metta practice and all that simply because it was opening up so much stuff internally, right? That there was a reluctance to go there. But then once I got kind of past that, I kind of had this academic distrust for the whole idea of cultivating mind states when, you know, really what we're doing is letting go of trying to manipulate anything, right? We're just allowing. But then I kind of came to the place where I saw that we're not really cultivating these states, although we use that word. We're really getting out of the way so that these states can be seen, can emerge on their own. For people that were here, was it last week, Rupert Spira? I played a video clip. I think it was last week, where he talked about we don't open to difficult emotions. We don't allow, I use the word allow, we don't allow difficult emotions, right? We simply stop resisting them. And they allow, so it's not like it's not anything we do. There's not a self that's doing this. We're simply getting the self out of the picture so that these things can be allowed, or can, you know, love can express itself. So it's a really different way of seeing it, right? It is a not self-teaching. Love, self-love, compassion, allowing, acceptance, those sounds like things we're doing, but they're not self-teachings, because they will emerge on their own when we stop resisting and struggling with what is. People see that? That's such a, for me, that was like an aha when I saw that. Yeah, wow, when I stop struggling, this emotion just expresses. It's just there. I don't have to do anything other than stop pushing it away. Yeah. So I don't know what we're doing next week. I'm kind of a few minds. I could actually explore this topic more, but I think we got into it further than I thought we would tonight. So I don't know. I'm also the Reggie Ray teachings on somatic meditation. So more of the Buddhist meditation approach to it, as opposed to the Peter Levine somatic experience approach to it, is something that is very powerful. Particularly if anybody kind of feels stuck in their practice. So this somatic meditation is just a real opener. It really gets kind of the awareness flowing, I guess you could say, the energy channels flowing, and then awareness, which is all part of that. So that's something else I'm interested in. I don't know. I'm open to ideas as well, what people would be interested in pursuing next. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm glad that you actually mentioned that you might want to go further with this, because the whole area of trauma and how to deal with emotions and finding some hope and to take care of yourself at the same time is very important. So it would be very helpful, I think, even to explore in more sessions. I think what we sort of touched on different things, but to go even further with it, that I would appreciate that, I think.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for exploring this whole topic of trauma, which you say some people ignore a little bit, you know, and don't want to discuss it. But there's a lot of people that are looking for how to not just survive, but to try to live a little bit.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, well put. Yeah. Yeah, and we're going through kind of a collective trauma experience right now with COVID, right? We are really collective trauma, at least collective anxiety. I mean, it's there's a real felt sense of it. This is a big deal. This will affect us for generations. The repercussions of this. Yeah. We'll think back, you know, you think of how wars and depression in the past affected the previous generations. I think that there'll be a lot more will come out after this is sort of behind us about how it affected people, their mental health, um, addictions. I mean, we know of so many opioid use is way up. All these different things are, we know that they're happening if we investigate. We know that this is happening. So there's a real sense of collective anxiety and trauma right now. So it's something we could continue to explore. And you know, the body is so critical in that, right? Body awareness is so critical in that. So we could do several sessions. You know what might be fun is looking at the 4 foundations of mindfulness within that perspective. How we can bring the 4 foundations of mindfulness to the collective trauma and anxiety that's being experienced right now with COVID. Yeah. Does that sound exciting? Yeah. Because usually, I mean, 4 foundations of mindfulness, you know. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for reading the poem by Jeff Foster. I have been following him for quite some years. There are only small little YouTube clips on to watch, but he does deal with emotions and trauma all the time. And yes, I found him very, very helpful, very down to earth. He's a young man who went through severe, severe depression, almost suicidal, and he had an awakening and went on from then. He's also an astrophysicist, but he's a very, very interesting teacher, and you probably like him.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and I wanted to thank Alan for what he said about the young child. What helps me is to embrace my inner child. When the sadness really takes a hold of me, I look at this 4 or 5-year-old girl and I give her a hug and I hold her. And that makes it a little better. And it really does help. Thank you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a practice to envision ourselves as babies or infants or small children and bring that image into our hearts. Yeah. I have a picture of myself with these little funny shoes on with, you know, with the little buckles and the strap that goes across. And my feet are kind of crossed and I've got a little Batman tie on. And I'm just kind of sitting there getting my picture taken. And I sometimes just imagine that image of, you know, that innocent child and, you know, just wanting to be loved. And yeah, so that can be a very helpful image for, you know, connecting us with that inner love. I'll have to show, I'll put the picture up there next week and you can. So I'll, any other ideas about where to go from here before I close out? I'll try and decide and get something out. So, you know, sooner rather than later. But yeah, if you have any ideas come to you, you can email me as well and let me know. Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining the group. I appreciate your presence. as everyone else does. The saying is a wonderful support for all of us, myself definitely included. I appreciate you all. Well,
Good night.
Thank
Good
you
night,
very
everybody.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody next
Stephen.
week.
Thank you, everybody.
You're
Bye,
Good
everybody.
night.
Bye.
Thanks, Stephen.
Bye. Nice
Good
to see
night.
you.
I wanted to ask a
Yeah.
question, Stephen. I sent the Dana last time to the email on your website, on the website, and it didn't get through, I think. So I don't know.
So yeah, check the, because it usually works. I've never had this problem before, so maybe
Maybe I didn't write the email properly.
yeah, it can be.
But I'll try to send another one, and because that was my idea, each time. And
Yeah, try again and see what happens, and email me what you're using as an email. Wait, no, you can't do that. If you click on my email within the group, it should
yeah,
bring up my email as well, because I have several emails, right? But they all go to the same place. But Stephen not Hick or Stephen _ Hick
okay,
.ca.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. I will.
Okay.
Right.
So,
Thanks
bye-bye.
again. Bye bye.
Yeah, that was fun.
That's good. It's really good. Yeah. No, it was a good reminder that yeah, because a lot of self-judgment goes on, I'm assuming, not just with me, and that's a key element of that. It's almost an antidote to that, is that the fact that we're all, when you think of that image of the small child, as we're trying to do our best, and we're all earnest and trying and striving, and there's that, you can picture a little child trying to do something, trying to please you, trying to help, and we're all kind of like that, and we're trying to please ourselves, and when we fall short, then we're like the parent going, or the teacher going, no, it's bad. Kind of resonated with me.
Yeah. Well, nice. Yeah. Yeah. It's a key part of our practice to just notice self-judgments and let them be, not believe them, follow them.
Yeah. Yeah. Easy to say.
Yeah, it's a practice. It's a training. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was good again, it's something so obvious and yet can never be reminded enough.
Yeah. Yeah. True. That we always need reminders of these things.
The core things. Yeah. Yeah. So I had a funny week. I was kind of untethered again, where I was, when I reflect back on the week, I think I got way too out of my routine, and then I found that it was hard for me to sort of feel satisfied, and I was feeling irritable and easily triggered more. It was a strange feeling, and kind of out of balance, and so I'm like,
Is
whoa.
that a common thread through the week or just a day here and there?
No, pretty much through the week. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
yeah,
different.
because sometimes I feel like I want to break out of routine, and and it feels good. And then after a while, it's a bit like too much ice cream. After a while, and I have a stomach ache, or I'm saturated or whatever. I'm like, now I'm kind of, I feel this kind of, it's hard to, I don't know. Nothing feels satisfying.
What was the ice cream during the week?
It was indulging in, I would say, lots of social interaction, lots of physical activity, kind of, it's almost was it was spontaneous how it arose, but, you know, I would have this opportunity to do lots of skiing and then lots of walking with people and kind of, and then I overdid it and I got overtired and then I didn't want to do these other things that I needed to do. And but indulging in my fatigue and trying to rest didn't please me either. And I felt all out of whack.
Yeah. Are you busy at work still?
Not nearly as much, no.
Okay.
So I can do more of this self-indulgent kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to do that too.
Yeah, you know,
Not so much that it wears you out, but
yeah. And I lost my balance. I lost my equilibrium kind of thing. And I thought, wow, you know, this is interesting. It's, you know, it's what I sometimes find I chafe with is structure and routine, but without it, it's worse.
yeah,
Life is worse.
yeah, habitual beings for sure. Yeah.
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 And but yeah, you're right. We got to break out, and it's a bit like you can't have the bowl without the empty space inside the bowl. I think this helps bring me back to what I know fundamentally is important, is to have a regular practice, which I got off course with, and to, okay, once in a while overdo it, fine, you know, but yeah, I guess life is trial and error.
Yeah, that's for sure. You don't know whether you're going to get tired from something.
Yeah,
I did too much and I ended up having a morning nap the next day.
yeah.
It was required for me to kind of recharge, have a nap at 10:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
tired enough that I fell asleep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And yeah, so it's I think the good thing that comes out of when at least in my experience, when I've experienced something, you know, I I'm out of whack or whatever, out of kilter, out of center. Um, it's a teacher in and of itself, that whole experience of, "Well, how did I get here and what's going on and you know, what is this feeling and what's the antidote sort of thing, or less sort of saying what should I do, it's what should I let go of.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that's really came out tonight as well. It's this reminder of when you let go of something rather than looking for the solution, but rather, for me, letting go is a better approach.
Yeah.
So
Did you
yeah,
do some yoga this week?
I didn't, no.
Yeah, because that's
I
a very centering, that can be a very centering and grounding.
Yeah, and I noticed that didn't get to it, and it's such a personality trait for me when when I want to try something new, it takes me a while to get to feel like I come at it from all, it's almost like a dog looking at something strange. I come at it from all sides. And it's like when I'm ready, then it's nah.
And
But I'm okay with that.
good time, it'll come in good
Yeah,
time.
I'm definitely wanting to explore it. And I liked the idea of the somatic meditation as
Did you
well.
do that stuff again, where you're dropping on your,
Yeah, the dropping on my heels doesn't work so much, but the moving around and the wooing and, you know, kind of, I like that somehow.
yeah, yeah,
Not a lot, but
well,
just
it
to kind of,
resonates. Yeah, then do it.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
to explore. And you're right, like, so the yoga thing, but I think I'm impeded by my concept of yoga that I do, and I'm not
Well,
really
that's what I
sure.
meant. Did you do your yoga? That's what I was asking, if you did any yoga during the week.
Well, I do yoga every Monday night with a yoga class online.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, if you
Oh,
did.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, and it's wonderful. Absolutely. It's
maybe find a class similar that you could do and just do two. If
yeah.
you find it wonderful, then do two wonderful yoga sessions a week.
I wanted to explore the idea that you gave me of doing maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes of yoga and then sitting.
Yeah.
for grounding. I wanted to explore that and I didn't do it. And I was conscious that I was resisting and I'm not, you know, in my inimitable style. But it's not forgotten, that's for sure. It's I need to settle again and it happens. Things happen when I'm kind of more open and I don't know.
But if you find your yoga class that you do Monday nights is joyful and you love it, do
I do.
more of that.
Yeah, I should.
So doesn't sound like there'd be any resistance, because when you mentioned it, you went, "Oh, I just love that." So see if there's another class that you can do on like a Wednesday night or something, or whatever night. It doesn't matter what night it is.
I never thought of that.
Just do another. See if there's another class you can connect with. If you know, maybe does that teacher do other classes?
During, I don't know, actually. That's a good point. I know she did other classes before COVID and the isolation we're doing. All this, but she would have a seniors class and then one at a yoga studio and then one at her home that we would go
Oh,
to.
doing a few classes, you might be able to connect with another one of her classes.
Yeah, she's an old friend of mine, actually. So
Nice.
yeah, I never thought to ask her, but you're right, I never thought to do it. I thought, oh, I do it once a week, that's good. But you're right, it's part of that. It's not just physical, it's also very, I mean, it focuses the mind.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Yeah, well, you do shavasana at the end, I take it.
Yes.
I often drag out the shavasana. I'll turn that into a meditation after, because I find the shavasana because yoga is really just to prepare you for meditation, right? That's why it's in the Vedas as preparation. So it's really to get your energy channels all open and the chakras all balanced so that you can then sit in meditation.
Oh, okay.
Uh, Shavasana is simply a lying down meditation, right? You're just letting go, letting the breath breathe itself, and you're just letting. I mean, that's what it is. So you can just continue to do it lying down, or I often just get up into a sitting posture and continue the shavasana as a meditation. So it's another way to kind of extend into a meditation practice.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to explore, combining them. Yeah.
But you could do it right in after your class even. You don't have to do anything special then. Just add 10 minutes to the end of your class.
Oh, it'd be so easy because it's just we feel so good. And so, yeah.
Time to meditate when you feel like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And then see if you can do that twice a week. That would be fun.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I'll ask her if she does other ones, or if not, she could maybe recommend where I might look for something I can do, a guided yoga, because I'd rather.
Yeah. Yeah. I know Go Boomerang has a bunch if you've ever been on
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
My wife does some on Go Boomerang
Oh,
classes.
okay.
Yeah. So you can check that out. There's all kinds of them. They have like 50 classes a day, different courses. But
You talked about it. Yeah. That's
yeah.
a platform, I guess it is.
Yeah, just go to goboomerang.ca.
All one word, Go Boomerang. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, it's good to see you and take care. See you next week for whatever we're doing. I'm not sure yet, but
All sounds good. And I'm glad to hear about your dad.
yeah, I was so relieved. Yeah. Yeah. So
I love
relieved.
the story about his girlfriend. That's great.
Yeah, I gotta go by. Click. Oh yeah.
Oh, people never change.
He didn't say thank you, but it was a pretty quick thank you. Then he had to go.
He was overjoyed.
It was, yeah.
Lovely, lovely story. Thank you.
Bye-bye.